Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, everybody. My name's Medina. You know me already. I have the greatest pleasure of introducing you today, if you don't know her already, Holly Mara, who is joining us from New York in the middle of a snowstorm. So 10 points for getting here in the middle of a snowstorm. And Holly is, let me just pull up her bio. She is originally from New York and studied theatre in college and continued her journey as a thespian for many years, doing live theatre and voiceover work in New York. She then lived in DC for over a decade and co-wrote and starred in a short film project, which we'll show a little clip of in a minute, which was nominated at various film festivals that year. That was 2020. After the pandemic, she hopped over to Turkey to test the creative waters overseas. We'll ask her about that as well. So far, she has directed an award-winning short film for Teachers' Day in Uşak, Turkey, and is currently working on a second short film project with some actor friends. In between these projects, she voices the comedic role of Red for Red Nose Day Comic Relief USA videos. She sometimes writes songs, some silly, some serious, and films her own sketches on the side for fun, which she posts to social media. She also has all kinds of other feathers in her hat, including poetry, and we'll ask her to read some poetry later. So welcome to this incredibly multi-dimensional and multifaceted
and
writer.
Can never concentrate on one thing.
Well, you know what?
The artist mind. The mind
that
of an
sounds
artist.
very, very familiar.
Yes.
So tell me, how are you today, Holly?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. Praise be to God. I'm really good. I'm here visiting some friends in New York and my family, and just so happy and blessed to be talking with you guys, and for you guys to offer a space for people to talk about what they do, because I think, especially when you're in kind of a transitional period, as I feel like I am in my life with moving and everything, it's great to kind of talk out what you're doing so you can kind of figure out what you're doing. So I appreciate you guys offering this space for writers.
Oh, it's wonderful. And I think I see
figure
a cat
ourselves
walking in the
out.
background, blurry.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's my friend's cat. He's like definitely not used to change, so he's complaining a little bit that I'm like being so
Like, who is this
he's
person
like an
invading
old
my space?
He's like an old little grumpy Garfield. I'm sorry. His name's Patik, which means slipper in Turkish. Patik, where are you? Come back.
I used to know a cat called Pantoufle. That's very strange. Seems to be a popular international name for a
Yeah,
cat.
Patik. Yeah, it's like it just means it's a Turkish slipper. It means slipper in Turkish. It's like
The things that parents throw. Okay, let's
yeah,
not get.
yes.
We're getting distracted already.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness. Yeah. See, this is the mind of just creatives just going off.
The mind of creativeness.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, I want to ask you, how did you get into writing? And I'm thinking particularly in terms of theater and acting.
Okay, so theater and acting, when I was a child, I actually had really bad stage fright. This is such a really bizarre place to start, but I had really bad stage fright. And I would remember I would go on vacation with my parents and they'd have some sort of like reenactment somewhere and they'd call kids from the audience. And I was like, I never wanted to go. And my sister actually had more, kind of confidence than I did. So I think I was fascinated by my stage fright. I think it started with that. It was like something I was afraid of. Why was I afraid? Can I conquer this fear? And so I, along with my sister, joined kind of a drama program in the summer when I was like maybe 8, 9. And first of all, I love the teamwork, camaraderie. I realized like, you don't have to do this on your own. You know what I mean? You don't have to be on stage. Other people are on there doing it with you. They're just as nervous as you. And so I started doing some summer programs and I really fell in love with it. I fell in love with the fact that, you could read a whole play, and you do parts of plays. And I really enjoyed reading anyway. And that you could express your emotions in a range of ways that it always just, it never was the same. I love that kind of idea of the theater, is that when you do a performance, it's never the same every night. And I fell in love with, I think, just the, a mix of the teamwork, the expressions, the creative process behind it. And I think it's always it's been not only with the stage fright kind of drawing me into that and having me analyze like why am I afraid to be on stage, and what's makes me so fearful about it. is I think the mystery of like the whole process of being an actor too, you know, like that, like figuring out a character and what they like and how they interact with other people, and kind of like crafting this imaginary world that people come to watch, you know, come to see and then also believe, but you're telling a story that may have elements of truth and also morality to it as well. I think that's just like, that whole process is just like mind blowing to me. I think it's just, it will never bore me. You know, it fascinates me to see even today an actor on screen and wonder how they did that and how did they get to that place and what character physicalities they had to take on and things like that. I just, yeah. So I think it started for me at a young age, you know, elementary school, and then I continued into the drama clubs in high school, and I was in all the shows. I was still a little on the shyer side, so I was never like the lead. I really think I broke out of my shell in actually college when I did. He wants to say something too. My cat, the cat wants to say something too.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's
Oh,
talking a
bring
lot.
it on.
Yeah, Patty, come here. I really
Use him as
think.
like a ventriloquist dummy.
So yeah, I think I came out of my shell when I finally decided to be a theater major. It's like that's when I felt committed enough and confident enough in myself. And I think I kind of grew out of that awkward high schooler where I felt like, okay, the best parts go to like the popular kids, and I'm just gonna be kind of like the secondary role in the background. And I kind of really was a part of a group of people who are very, you know, tolerant and understanding, and anything that helps you bring out your natural abilities as well. I think I was a part of a theater group that really helped me with that. And then yeah, so from then on I just continued, you know, in projects outside of school and in school. And I think I was also really inspired by, I think, my drama coach in high school. She was a female, and she was a very strong, prominent, you know, very open-minded and also outspoken individual, and that always just fascinated me as well, that she was a director of all the plays, and you know, being a female. And for me, that just always stood out as something that like I was in awe of.
Wow. So it kind of inspired you in some way, would you say, to
Yeah.
yourself?
Yes. Yeah, she was like beautiful but like so tough. Like, and I love that. I was like, that's like, you know, just I think she was definitely a role model of mine. And now it's kind of come up later in years where I'm like, oh, Mrs. Hinz would do that, you know, she did that, and you know, now I'm doing that. It's interesting to see how, like, you know, teachers we've had have affected us, you know, positively.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, it's really fascinating when you find, I mean, a lot of people might not actually have had one of those teachers at school. It may have been somebody outside of school, but if you're lucky,
Yeah.
you have somebody at school. And I
Yes.
remember I had a really cool, the school I went to was very, very into theater as well. So we had really cool drama teachers, and they really encouraged us and did productions every year. Like we did several productions a year, and of a lot of Shakespeare and a lot of musical theater as well.
Yes.
And they just had a budget for it. I guess it's so frustrating. It's about the budget that the school has, right?
Yeah.
You need a good auditorium, you need props. You don't need very
Yes.
much actually, but you just have to have, you know, the time to be able to invest in that. But
And
I mean,
someone who's willing to invest their time like that in it. I mean, I didn't, you know, you see now how time consuming it was. I mean, we would be after school until 7 p.m. for these productions, you know, and then watching her do tech week and do that. I mean, it's just, I think, yeah, I think a lot of that just really, you see something and then it hits you on later in life where like, oh, I've actually seen this before, or I've experienced this before, but it was someone else doing it.
yeah, you get that kind of mirroring experience,
Yeah,
right?
mirroring
Kind of
sort of
like
thing.
it's imprinted on you, and then you go,
Yes.
oh, I'm actually doing it now. Like
Yeah,
20
I'm
years
actually doing
later,
it
this
now.
is
And she actually told me, because I told you I was a bit on the shyer side, and this is why I think I have recently switched into directing, is like, you know, we did plays, and we directed our own plays, you know, she allowed us to do that. And I remember I directing my own play then, and she came to me specifically, and she never really picked me out. You know, I was kind of, like I said, I was on the shyer side in high school. I know that's really kind of hard to believe, seeing some of the stuff I pose. It's like, were you shy, really? I think I just was like within my own circle, and I just didn't really mesh well with like the super popular kids. And you know, it's like whatever. um she came to me and she's like, you know, you really should consider directing. You have an eye for directing. And that's like one of the only things I remember her saying to me in high school, and that just like stuck out in my mind. It was just like so weird. Yeah,
interesting.
so it just, I think that's why recently I've kind of uh gotten into directing because I haven't made it as really as a hijabi actress. Like I'm white, I'm wearing hijab. Like there's no role in Turkey or United States unless I wrote it myself, which is like written for someone like
Mm.
me. And so I think like I get antsy when I'm not doing something creative. So I'm like, I should try directing now because at least I can see other people doing this craft and I can, arrange it in a way that's in my mind and get to see the story play out still and be a part of it still.
Yeah, it's still creative. It's
It's still
absolutely creative.
creative. It's still really creative and you're still, very much, you're a part of the heart and soul of it. So I know I
Yeah.
jumped from like high school to now suddenly like what I'm doing now, but I just wanted to kind of like tie that in a little bit.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's also like very interesting to see the way that you make those connections, because
Yeah.
that's what creative minds do. They're making
Yeah.
connections in
Get
ways that
connections
are
all the time. Like,
intentional.
does this mean this? It's like I saw a meme once and I was like, oh, this is definitely for anybody who's an artist. And it was like, I think it's like an anime character. He's like looking at a butterfly. I'm sure you've seen this meme before and you write whatever you want over it. And it was like, does this mean something? And it was like any creative ever, does this mean like, of course it means something. For it means
It's a
something to all.
butterfly.
It's a
Of course it means
butterfly. It
something.
has like a million meanings for me. Maybe it has means something different for you, or you could write a poem about it. You could write a song. I don't know. It's just that's how we're thinking. Yeah, it's just making those connections. So.
And how did you get into writing then? You mentioned that like you didn't really find roles as an actress that were like written for you, and that
Yes.
was that an inspiration to write, or were you already writing anyway?
So I was writing in high school. I was part of a creative writing group, and I wrote a lot of poems, a lot of short stories, and they did really well. I mean, I even got some poems in there was a school literary magazine, and I would publish some of those poems. So I was always writing poems. That was something that was just always in the background, and something in songs, like ever since maybe I was like 12 or 13. I mean, I remember if my best friend was going through an issue, I'd say, I'm going to write a poem or a song for you. And I would come on the bus the next day. She was my best friend. And I'm like, I wrote this poem just for your situation. And I'd like read it to her. And it would be
Oh,
something, completely mushy or something. Or, but, it'd be very deep, about her situation that she was going
about
through, which,
butterflies.
about butterflies. But anyway, yeah. So I did a lot of poetry. I didn't really write a lot of plays, but now that I'm remembering, I did actually with a good friend of mine. Um, it's kind of a crazy story. When we would go to to at that time I was Christian, and so there was communion as in the Protestant tradition. To become a member of the church at 14, you have to go through like a series of like classes and stuff like that. And so my best friend at the time, Elise, and I would sit down, and instead of focusing on the sermon, we would rewrite episodes to the X-Files. I don't know if you remember the show, the X-Files.
Oh yeah, I'm a
Yes.
90s baby.
Yeah, 90s baby.
Love
So
the
we would
X-Files.
rewrite our versions of what should have happened. And they were plays. They were essentially plays. So there's that I
Cool.
remember doing, but I mostly wrote poems and short stories. And it brought me to a point, obviously, where when I started wearing the scarf, and it was, I was out of college and I started wearing this, and I was doing voiceover work and very happy with that, but still wanted to do acting on my own, and got a manager in DC, was trying out, realizing that I was only being accepted for academic roles and kind of like roles about prejudice. It was almost like very academia kind of things where, there was nothing creative about it. There was no story. There was no
Emotion.
it was just kind of like I was a pawn in the industry there, and I was getting very frustrated. And I said, well, I'm going to start making my own skits. I started writing my own skits, like comedy skits, and putting them on YouTube, and it would touched a lot on Islamophobia and people's views of women wearing scarves, and just doing little skits here and there when I felt like it. But I really wanted to take it to another level, and I saw that, a friend of mine shared with me a post that someone posted saying like, hey, I really want to do a short film, an actor or an actress, and write, co-write with them. And I was like, this is my chance. Like, I can write about, something that happened to me, as a hijabby white lady, and I can, collaborate with this person. And so thankfully I ended up collaborating with him. His name is Ibrahim Zafar. And we wrote, he pretty much gave me free reign to say, to write what I wanted to write first, like to kind of, he's like, I want this to come from you. If we're going to do a short film, like I really want it to come from like, I know you're a writer as well. I want it to come from an experience you had or something that you can relate to. And so I wrote this concept. I wrote 3 concepts to him, and we picked one of them, and it's the one that we ended up doing for Nadia, which was this kind of close to the truth. It did something similar happen to me, but it's not exactly in how it pans out. We've changed a lot of things, obviously, to make it a story. It's not always your own. It kind of becomes its own thing as you're writing. So we did change a lot of things around. It's not completely factual, but it's interesting to imagine what a hijabi white lady, going through kind of like this major transition where she's just gotten engaged, and she, is kind of on this new path, new life, and then this, like, the past comes back to kind of like to haunt her in this like phone conversation, and what is she going to do with that? Does she fall back to old patterns, old habits, old ways, or is she on this new path? Is she determined? What is it? And that's just like really just interesting, like a polarizing kind of, it's like very psychological what happens to her in the film. So I liked playing along with that. It was fun to write. Yeah. So
Let's watch a little clip of it, actually, because I want to ask you about it afterwards. You mentioned it's quite psychological, and I think from the writing angle, it's really interesting to look at film and think about how the writer came about, that script, because, film scripts, this, but maybe some people watching are not necessarily aware of this, but they say that script writing is the hardest. It's the most rigorous form of writing.
It is.
Because there's no bump, there's nothing in the way. It's all just dialogue and movement. And so, like, even the expressions on the people's faces has to be so minimal, and to let the director.
It's interesting because the thing that I've learned about script writing also is that you don't always have to put everything in. I feel like as like someone who's a novelist or someone who's a poet, or we're writing shorts, the more detail, sometimes the better, where it's, but actually script writing is very like stripped down, almost like Hemingway, it's very basic. It's to the point. You don't actually have to write in a lot of the things. You want to give the actors free rein to do what they need to do. Like if you write down every single camera angle that needs to happen at that time, it doesn't always do you justice, because it doesn't leave the room for discovery later on. So I find, for me, the challenge, because as someone who loves to write descriptions and over explain and talk about what the actors should be doing here, like it is maybe harder for me in that regard, because you have to really simplify it, and you have to trust the fact that the people that you're hiring are going to fill in the rest of those things. The DP is going to fill in their ideas with where a camera should be in a certain angle, because things change constantly when you're on set, and when you're in a play, and where something may not work. You wrote that the character was walking by the window, but then there's the reflection of the camera in the window or something like that, and you have to change it around. So, you know what I mean? Like there were times when we thought we could use something, use the camera looking outside of the door and following her, and then it didn't work. And then, but that's not even in the script. It's just something you kind of figure out on set. A lot of things are figured out in person and as a team. So I really like that aspect of it. Like it is harder for me though, because it's very bare bones script writing.
Yeah.
It becomes very bare bones, and less detail, I think, and more concise, the better, because it's just, you can fill that detail in later, like how the camera pans in, or from what angle, and where the actor is standing. I mean, if it's really, really important to the story, and you're like, the actor definitely has to be in the center of the aisle of the pews and stuff like that, it's just in your mind and it has to be that way, then okay, write it in. But if it's like every single movement you're writing in, you don't feel like you have to do that, because the actor, you want to give the actor creative space to fill that in. So Yeah.
It's a really beautiful insight, this, because a lot of the time we're writing, if you're writing a story or a poem, it's just you writing it, and it's not
Yeah.
necessarily a collaboration with anybody else.
Yeah.
But as soon as you write to collaborate with somebody else, it changes the whole, it changes the, what's the expression, the goalposts, and not really the goalposts exactly, but like the whole pitch is changed, because suddenly
It does.
there are all these other energies that are going to be flowing in and out.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the project is going to kind of morph and be its own
And be
thing.
its own thing, and you have to trust that. Like, it's sometimes it's so hard to let go of that, because like you said, if you're writing a poem, or if you're, it's yours, and like, yeah,
Your
someone can critique
control.
it, and you can go in and fix those things that they critiqued you on, but it's still yours. But I feel like a script is different, even if you're not collaborating with someone, because you do have to think about everybody else on your team that's going to give an insight and say something that isn't going to work for you. This may not work for you, and the lighting may not be good here, and we're going to have to move it to the back room, or whatever it is. And so
A lot of thinking on the
it's
hoof, right?
it's
Changing things on
malleable.
the
Yeah,
fly.
changing thing on the fly, because and you have to be okay with that. You have to be an easygoing, go with the flow person when that does happen, because that's just, you have to just trust and say like, okay, well, if this person's a professional, they know it's not going to work in this manner, let's just go with their, change something around. But if you own the script, and if you're the, it would be more difficult, I can imagine, for someone who hasn't written the script and they're just directing a script that was given to them, and then they have to kind of stick with it. But that's why I think it's really cool to direct and write your own script, because then you have a lot more. That's why I revere, like Tarantino and Wes
Right.
Anderson, and just because they write and direct, it's combined, and
You can tell, right? I mean, Wes
yeah,
Anderson's films, you just have this feeling of like a complete vision that the writer and the director is just kind of like, boom, it's just there.
it's there. It's yeah, it's a beautiful amalgamation. How do I say that word? Amalgamation.
Amalgamation.
Amalgamation of, the ideas, and it's obviously this symmetry. I just had to say that in Wes Anderson's films, his symmetry is insane. So I think that's always just like aesthetically
Oh
pleasing.
my gosh,
Yeah,
you're right. I
uses
did not realize that.
symmetry as something to kind of draw you in. It looks like, I mean, every frame of his looks like a painting to me. That's what I would
Mm.
love to, that's like something I'm shooting towards in some regard, something, but it's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. Well, let's have just watch a couple of minutes from Nadia.
Okay. Yeah,
This
sure.
is your beautiful, and I love also how it's all done in a very small space. It's like very minimalist, but it's so evocative of this very. It's a story that obviously is very personal to you, but many
Yeah.
viewers at home, especially non-Muslims, are not really going to be aware of this, of any of the
Yeah.
dynamics of this.
Okay.
I saw, your post on Facebook, something about a dinner with Adam.
Yeah.
So what? Did he pick up some skills and finally learn how to cook for you? Lobster. Lots of lobster.
No, but his family came along this time.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, and he gave me a ring actually.
Oh, shit. Like what kind of ring? A ring pop or?
No. It was an engagement ring. It was an engagement dinner.
You're engaged?
Yeah.
Nice. I'm happy for you.
Thanks.
Anyway, I gotta get going. I'll catch you later.
Eric,
Nadia.
what's wrong?
Nothing's wrong. I just
No,
gotta
no,
go.
no, no, something's wrong. I mean, I just told you I'm getting married and now you're
How do
acting
you
weird.
expect me to act?
I don't know, normal, happy for me.
I am happy for you. Happy for your new life.
What new life? You know, I'm still the same person, okay? Maybe a few things have
Okay,
changed, but still the
okay,
same
well, so be it.
person, just
I'm
this
happy for
one
you.
thing.
It's
I'm
been
gonna stop
so
you there.
long since I've like watched it or thought. I think I don't want to step on your toes, I know you have some questions and stuff too, but I think because of the pandemic happening and all the film festivals kind of like we fell short at like getting anywhere with it. It's like it has a bittersweet spot in my heart, Nadia. You know what I mean? It's like I love it and I'm so proud of it, but at the same time I'm like, oh, it just could have been maybe something better and something, I don't know, it could have gotten recognition or something. I don't know. I know you shouldn't think that way. It's always like a stepping stone, and every art piece in your life is a learning, is a, you know, you garner lessons from it. But I think I'm just kind of like, oh, did my career end there? You know, I'm like in
No, it's
some
not the last
aspect.
time, inshallah.
Inshallah. Yeah, I'm trying not to think pessimistically at all, but of course it's like
Pandemistically. Well, that's a good word.
oh, I said pessimistically, but it sounded like pandemistically. That does sound like a cool word. Can we coin that?
Let's coin it.
Let's coin it on this meeting.
We did it today,
Pandemistically.
guys.
It sounds like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, but we can make it our
Pandemistic.
I love it. That was amazing. That was just from our vibes being together and just we're vibing through the screen, through the camera, everyone.
Through the tubes.
Through the tubes.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, at the beginning of the film, you have a conversation with somebody else called Martha. Yes. Did you voice Martha?
Did I what?
Did you voice Martha?
No, no. That would have been funny actually having. We actually had another actress, and she voiced it. The other actors were actually upstairs with their mics and phones and calling me in real time. We did it live because we wanted it to sound, you know, as realistic as possible. I mean, I really was hearing Eric in real time on the phone, and I was hearing the lady who played Martha. I was hearing her in real time too. But she was just a gem, and she just did great accents. And we wanted to make sure we had somebody who could really pull off the Southern accent, or who had that in their you know, resume as something that they could do strongly. So she did it. I wish that would have been funny, but it would have been really hard to pull off, because then I would have had to record myself previously, and it's really hard to get that kind of natural reaction from a recording. Yeah, so I think it made sense that we did it live. Yeah.
It's really interesting because it does have a very naturalistic feeling to it, because you know that you've got the camera on a gimbal kind of following you around, like,
yeah. Oh, our poor DP Ahmed, he was a trooper. He had the steady cam all day on him, and he had to do no stops, just straight through with body cam. I should probably let me see if I can find
and it's like a 10-minute long film, so it's
10-minute long, and he had to carry that weight of that camera for 10 minutes following me throughout the house. I mean, that was really intense. It was extremely
How many takes did you have to do? Actually,
we got the majority of what you saw that on our first take.
Very interesting.
It was insane. It was our best take, was our first take, and the majority of what you're seeing, like maybe 90%. I think there's only one part in the dining room when I go and sit down and like start playing with the cake. I'm pretty sure that is from a second take or third take because of the camera, because the camera was so heavy that he couldn't carry it throughout, that he had to take breaks. So it wasn't all the way through, but I know he's gonna eat. I hope he doesn't listen to this and get upset or something. Sorry, Ahmed, you did an amazing job. I couldn't do it. No, but really, it was just because of camera technical things that we had to stop. But the majority of what you're seeing is our first take. I mean, it really was like amazing. It was amazing. We were like ready to go at like 8. We're like, let's just do it. And we were just shocked that we just did it like on our first take, because we practiced and everything. We practiced a lot and made sure that we were reacting to each other naturally. I mean, the actors and I would, we would just meet and we would just do it on the phone. Eric and I would talk on the phone. We would recite it on the phone. We would try it different ways on the phone, just being on with each other. And even in person, we would, do kind of physical exercises, like where you throw a line to someone physically and using a part of your, we used things from our acting training to incorporate into the rehearsal so that we could, get the best out of it. And I think it's going back to like my stage fright from very young, is that I think because of that fear of stage fright, I'm a stickler for lines. Like I don't ever like forgetting a line. Like it's a fear of mine is like forgetting a line. So like I make sure the lines are really drilled into me to the point where like I could probably even say the other person's line, which ended up actually happening. I didn't say someone else's line, but I can tell the other person what their line is because that's how well I know it, because otherwise I won't feel comfortable enough to do it. So I have,
And you wrote the whole
yeah.
script, or you
Yeah,
collaborated on
me
it?
and Ibrahim and I wrote it together. So he definitely added his input, and he actually came up with the framing of it. Like he wrote kind of like a basic version at first that like we chopped out a lot of it, and then I told him I think I said to him something like, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna Edward Scissorhands this script, which means like I'm just gonna like chop it up and it's like just play with it. And I did, and I moved things around, and like I added my own things, and added my own lines and quirkiness and kind of like more like character traits to the characters, and he gave a good like foundation to work on. And then from that we ended up going through it and saying like, okay, what needs to cut? Like there was a like before like that whole Martha scene, he and I had like I think like 3 or 4 more pages like before that of me talking to Martha. And then I came to him one rehearsal and I was like, I think I'd watched like an interview with Tarantino or something, and he was like, start in the middle of the action. And if you if you watch like a lot of his movies like Pulp Fiction or Kill Bill, it's in the middle of something happening. It's usually in the middle of it doesn't seem like the scene has a beginning. You're just suddenly somewhere where these characters, things are happening to them. And I told him for the beginning of our play, I just said, or for our film, I said, we have to cut like that dialogue with Martha. Like we have to cut at least 3 pages of it. We're going to start in the middle. So as you see from the beginning of the movie, she's already talking to Martha. You don't hear the beginning of the conversation. You don't hear, hello, how are you? Whatever. And I heard you got engaged. There's none of that. It's literally nitty gritty to the point. She's already kind of interrogating her, asking her these questions about marrying this Middle Eastern man and getting into it. And you feel more of like a fly on the wall. You're more intrigued by that, I think, and you get drawn in as an audience more when you're like, oh, I'm suddenly somewhere where should I be here? Should I be listening to this conversation? It's interesting, and it kind of gives the audience that feeling. So that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah, it definitely creates tension. It creates that tension of, like you say, like, should I be here? This is a very intimate conversation. And on top of that, you're also hearing the other side. So you're getting to hear, you're literally like, it's like putting, like whatever it is that you put on the door to listen to. The glass on the door.
Exactly.
I've never done that. I've never seen it in movies and stuff. Like, but you feel like you're tapping into something, which is a really incredible device, like a writing device, to give a sense of intimacy and like to draw the listener, or the viewer in this case, or the reader, to draw them into that storyline. Just throw them right in the middle, and then let them figure it out. And actually, it doesn't take very long to figure out what's happening, because immediately the tropes are there, and you start. It's quite familiar territories in some ways, but I guess for some people it may be less familiar. But because it's a short form, if you really had to, you could go back and start from the beginning and watch it again. Like it's not like
exactly. It's good to start with short films, I think, because it just you're testing yourself as a writer, like as a scriptwriter. Like, can I have that beginning, middle, and end feeling, and can I condense that into 10 minutes, and can I tell a story of like 1 or 2 or 3 characters in a way that's plausible, interesting, especially in this day and age when we're just so inundated. Obviously it's kind of like cliche thing to even say now, but with social media and this kind of 15-second blips of entertainment that can you really capture still people's attention with a 10-minute story that can leave them with something they didn't know before. I think that's also my drive for telling these kind of stories, is like, this personal experience of living a different way and lifestyle, and wanting to get that out, and wanting people to think differently on certain topics.
Is that, would you say that that's one of your intentions? I know I'm diverging from the questions I send you now, but
it's okay. I know we've got to jump all over. I don't even know if we I feel bad. I go on here. Just cut me off if I ever over talk.
Please go ahead. This is really fascinating.
The intention is important, obviously, always. And I can definitely say that for Nadia, my intention was to give people a different insight into a Muslim revert or convert or someone who has come to Islam in their mind, and some struggle, and humanize them. And that's been a lot of the time my intention behind a lot of the art I do is like showing people the heart of someone past something that something material that they're focused on so much. I think there's so much focus on the material of this, and not on the people that wear it and who they are. And I really want to get into telling, stories of different Muslims. Like, that always just fascinates me and drives me to do what I do, and that's why also I did the teacher's film in the fall. I was like, well, people get to see how Muslims revere teachers here, and how they all the students here look so different, and some are wearing scarves, some are not. Like, I just want people to get a different idea and humanized idea of Muslims, as opposed to so much of the backlash we've seen in the Western media, for God knows how long. So yeah, it is a big intention of mine. Obviously, there's like personal intention too, where it's like, this is in my heart and I want to tell this story, and I think people would be really moved by this. And but on the other end, it's also, the idea, where I want to humanize, like, where, we've just been so demonized in the media for so long, that it's just, I feel like it's definitely time now, with all the now I feel like there's a space for that, a more tolerant space for that in the film industry, where we can do that. And I really want to hopefully try to take advantage of that in the best way possible. So.
That's really interesting you mentioned that, because we've been talking about this in in many of our like online gatherings. When I first wanted to write and get my writing out there like 20 years ago, it didn't feel like there was really a space for Muslims. It still felt quite antagonistic. And
Yes.
now it seems like we're kind of almost a generation on, and it feels like Muslims in the West, younger Muslims, are much more confident than I think my generation was. Yes. And articulate and willing to take those risks, and willing to put their creativity out there. And I think it's just a matter of time. These things they do just naturally take quite a lot of time. But part of what we want to do with the Writers Salon, and people watching this afterwards will already know. And hi, Mateen. Sorry, I haven't said hello to you yet. Assalamu alaikum. If you have any questions, Mateen, just chuck them in the chat and we'll come to them in a minute.
No worries. Yes, of course. I'm enjoying the conversation. Thank you.
Oh, good. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you so much.
One of the things we want to do with the salon is really nurture Muslims' voices, so that we're actually able to harness this incredible power, which is storytelling, and we can get those stories out there. And like you say, kind of, it's not like we weren't human and we need to be humanized, but that the narrative around us has been so dehumanizing that if we can somehow co-opt that in our own way by, just using it to our advantage. That sounds really manipulative.
Yeah.
Well, alhamdulillah. Okay, do you have a particular kind of schedule or a system for writing? What's your creative process like?
Well, I tend to get really creative at night. I mean, I write mostly at night. If something's really bothering me and overwhelming me, I will take the time out to, process it. I think writing is a form of therapy and processing certain instances for me, and to get my kind of mind to creatively shape what's going on with me. But I mostly write at night, and I use a lot of my notes section in my phone. My notes section is filled with poems, and that's where I write. I mean, that's just, I go to my notes and I just start writing something. If it's a sketch idea, I write it down. If there's a poem that I'm starting, or I like a line that I heard somewhere or that I said, write it down immediately. So it's usually comes from a place of inspiration, and usually at night. Sometimes I find myself, if I'm on a road trip by myself, I end up writing more songs, because I start singing random things to myself, and then I start doing voice memos, and so I'll leave myself like voice memos of like things I've sang on like road trips, which I just did recently. And then I look back later and I'm like, can I use this? Can I actually make this into a song, or can I actually do something with this? So it's like bits and pieces of things. But
do you ever have do you let it build up in sort of piecemeal, and then you kind of sit down and go, right, I'm going to sew that all together?
I think when my kids were younger and I had less time, like I remember there would be like I would have something in my mind, right? And I wanted to write, but I couldn't do it yet because, you know, my kids, it was like kind of, they were really young, like babies, like, and I was just like overwhelmed by it. And then I remember just like one night sitting down and like writing this explosive piece, like doing an all-nighter because I was like, I just have to get this out, whatever it was. It was like something that had been in my mind for, you know, the whole month. So it will build up. If I don't end up writing something and I know that it's something I need to write, it will build up in my mind till like to the point of like I can't just contain it anymore and it's explosive and I just end up writing it. And but then it feels good, it feels therapeutic, and I've gotten it out. And you know, but
Do you benefit from deadlines?
I do actually benefit from deadlines. I think that's actually why I did with the short film I did in the fall, the Teacher's Day, we had 4 days to do a film. 4 days, which was me
From beginning to end. Like,
yes, concept, find the poem for it, check out the space, you know, block it,
hire the
everything,
filming staff. Like,
I filmed it.
You were the crew.
I was the crew. I was the director, the DP, the writer, the editor.
Mashallah, multi-talented.
So so and we did that and they're like, okay, we have 4 days to do it. And I was like, okay, all right, bismillah. And then I stayed up for like 18 hours straight. And then I had lots of burgers when I was done. But I benefit.
You're going to say coffee.
But I benefit, and coffee. I benefit from, but I was a crazy person, but I benefit from deadlines because I think I'm not diagnosed or anything. And I know a lot of people bring this up, but like in their own maybe creative processes, but I really do think I have some form of ADHD because I think, and I think a lot of creatives maybe do, because we just jump from one thing to another. Yes. I jump from like one kind of part of me, you know, oh, the poet side of me. Okay, I'm going to work on this for a little bit. Oh, well, I'm writing a script, so I'm going to work on this for a little bit. And it just kind of gets all jumbled. And that's why I need structure. So
and
when
then
someone
it takes
gives
you
me
10 years to finish something because you're doing it.
Yes. Like I have a poetry book just sitting and I'm like, I just should just publish it. And I'm like, didn't do it yet. I just like feel like I benefit from that structure sometimes. Someone comes.
Oh, your sound has suddenly gone. Or is it me? Oh, I've suddenly lost your sound. Do you want to mute and then come back on again? Mute and unmute. Oh no, I can't hear you. Oh, no. But why? Oh, the sound is gone. Could it be the microphone suddenly broken? That's bizarre. Sometimes it just happens. Do you have a microphone in your computer? Or maybe unplug that. Can you unplug the headphones and plug them back in again?
Is it better?
Yeah, I heard you now.
Back?
Yes.
I pushed something. Okay, I did. It was me. Sorry. I this is clearly not my microphone, or else I would have known what to do. There was just like one
just
button.
imagine doing some kind of creative project with you because it would just be hilarious. This is exactly
okay, we figured it out.
We figured it out. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about ADHD and creative process.
ADHD, literally a pretty much an example of what just happened here is like my life. So ADHD side of it. Yeah, I really think like I do have trouble concentrating. So when someone does give me a deadline like that, it's great. And that's why I work better in teams and groups. Like when I collaborated with Ibrahim on Nadia, or when I, you know, worked with the group in the fall on that short film. And like whenever I do something in a group of people, I work better because it's like I have accountability. And I know that someone's going to say, when is this getting done? Or what's our time frame? Or, you know, I'm not just like floating in the clouds somewhere. It grounds me, you know?
Yeah. And it brings you back to execution rather than there's ideas and the creativity creativity of it, but it's like then the execution is like, "Ugh, come on, I've just got to push through this.
Just got to push through the work and enjoy it while I'm doing it and everything. So that's what I'm kind of in right now with this other short film that I want to do with this actors. It's like at least I have a couple of people behind me now in this group that like it's like, okay, well, what's your idea? Show me your idea and let's read it. And, so.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you find time to do all this amazing work? Because you also do really funny little skits that you put on social media, and you do voiceovers, and you did the voiceover for Red,
Yes,
red nose.
Yeah, the red nose. Yeah.
How do you manage to find? You have 3 kids, is that right?
Yes, I do.
MashaAllah. How do you find the time? How do you make it happen?
Honestly, I'm a night owl, and I think I do a lot of it. It actually helps that I'm usually in Turkey, and I I still work with some people in the States because their timing, it kind of my kids have already slept, so like I can then kind of work on something. Like when I worked with Ridwan, the creative director for Comic Relief and Red Nose Day, he approached me. He knew I did like funny skits and voiceovers and things like that, and he's like, would you like to do the voice of Red? And I jumped on it, and it was honestly just like an hour, less than an hour long session of me kind of like getting the voice right, and this is the voice he wanted, and me recording on my own. I have a good mic, and I have a good I have Adobe Audition, which is like for audio. It's a vocal software. So I just recorded there, and then he was able to, I just sent him the files when I was done with it. And that's pretty easy, like to find time for. Voiceovers is pretty, thankfully, like I think once you get a voice down and a character down, and then you have the lines there already, it's a little like a little more intensive is obviously doing a short film, that creates more, you need more time for that. Like you need to be somewhere, like you need to be like, if you're going to film it in Istanbul, you're going to be in Istanbul for a while and work with your team and get it. But voiceovers actually, I that doesn't take up too much time, but me filming my skits does take up some time. And it's like, my kids are usually in school during the day. Thankfully, they're all in school now. So I think that's what's really kind of broken open like a big opportunity for me to like use this time during the day and get done what I need to get done.
Don't you sleep?
I do sleep, and I do sleep in. I am someone who, if you called me at 11 a.m., like maybe I would be awake. Maybe. Like maybe. I know. I sleep.
Sorry, hang on 1 second. I need to sleep. My husband started to make a smoothie.
Oh, he started to make a smoothie? That's okay. He can make smoothies. That's okay. We're all cool with that here. My husband makes smoothies too, so
we're so cool. We're just so cool here. Like you can go and make your smoothie. You can do whatever. Still, I am recording a Zoom session, so do it quietly.
Do your smoothie quietly. Oh,
I'm sorry.
So
what are you saying?
Oh yeah. So yeah, basically my creative, it's just all over the place whenever I write or whenever I'm working on something. And the skits, I think I have to do it in increments. So if I'm filming a funny part, I film one thing in the basement one night, and then the next night I film another thing, and then the editing honestly takes the longest for me. Filming actually doesn't take that long for me. I'm a stickler for editing. So like if I'm editing something, I'll spend a long time on it sometimes, like to the point where like I'm like, like, I don't know, is this good? It's not good. That millisecond wasn't good. It's like, so I can get in my mind too much when it comes to like the editing, when I'm finally finishing up something. But
would you say as well, short form kind of increases that in some sense? Because if you're working with a very short film, like every millisecond counts so much more.
It does. And like, I think it can throw off even the flow of something. Like for me, I'll get really jolted if like there's a transition, like if I'm editing something and like there's a transition that doesn't feel organic, or it just kind of like jumps, or I had a cinematographer friend tell me that like your transition shouldn't look like transitions. And that was one of the best pieces of advice for me, because sometimes we want to put something in and just to make it look good, but actually sometimes you forget that there's like you're the editor and you have that editing mind, and you want to make something look beautiful and aesthetically pleasing and all that stuff, etc. But you forget there's an audience that's going to be watching this, and like, does it flow? you know what I mean? For them, does it just flow, or can they see when things are changing? You know what I mean? Like, you don't want it to actually be so obvious. So that was actually a really great piece of advice.
But again, kind of the minimalism. It's the minimalism thing, isn't it? It's the kind of less is more.
Yeah, and I sometimes get like, even this, I'm gonna put out a video today. There's something in there that I'm like, oh, I should probably fix that. It's too much. Like, I'm overthinking it now, I know. But yeah, if you put in too much, it can spoil it. You know, it can, if you add too many layers.
And especially with comedy, right? Comic timing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
How did you get into doing funny stuff? Because sometimes you have very serious.
I know. I have it's like, it depends on the, I guess, what I'm mood I'm in. I guess mood, or I guess just like what kind of space I'm in. Like, I feel like especially with the earthquake that recently happened, like I had a funny skit that I had done that I was going to put out, and it was like a ridiculous song that I'd written about winter, and it was like starring a chipmunk, and I had chipmunk voices. It was ridiculous. It was like one of the most ridiculous things. And then the earthquake happened, and I was like, there's no way I can put out this video right now, because it's just not the time and place for, like, nobody's in the mood to laugh, like, and it's just like, it was just, it's just like so ridiculous. It would have been rude, like, I think, in a way. So for me, like, comedy, I just always revered Jim Carrey, Robin Williams. I mean, they were just, comedians I looked up to, and like Amy Poehler and Kristen Wiig, Tina Fey. I mean, I was an SNL. I would watch SNL a lot up until I mean, recently I haven't really watched it recently. I'm not really kind of a fan of, like, or I don't really know the newer comedians, but I loved when people did impersonations, and I could always mimic and do different voices. I used to do little voices for my sister on, like, car rides. She had, like, anxiety, and I would just, like, do little characters for her in different voices. And I think I just always, me and my best friend at the time, Melody, she and I would record ourselves doing different, like, fake commercials, on, like, cassette tapes. Like, that's how old I am. I would use cassette tapes to, like, record our voices and do our own radio shows. And I just always loved being able to imitate people or sound like different people, and that just was always really fun for me. But I feel like I haven't used it to its potential. Like, I know I could do a lot more with it, and I think I'm still, like, sitting on, like, what can I do with, like, I have this plethora of voices that I can do. Like, what can I do with it? Can I do something beneficial with it? Like, that's always, like, kind of in the way back of my mind of something, like, if anybody has, like, a show they want to do with me and all my voices, who's listening out there, like, I'd love to. Like, we could do something, work together. But I don't think I could do it.
I
like,
want to do that
own.
with you. I want to.
Okay.
You're like, yes, come on.
I used to do theater. I used to.
Oh,
do
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so.
All right. I'm up to working with anyone and anything with my voices. And so that's why I did the voiceovers after I graduated college, was this radio theater that I did in New York. It was, like, all different voices. Like, I had a kind of voice, and then, like I can do, like, all these little, like, random voices, and it was just really fun to play with that aspect. But it's weird. I don't write a lot of comedy lately, and I don't know if it's just because of, like, the space I'm in or the time constraint. Like, I really think working with a group of people and, like, getting their kind of energy will kind of bring out that part of me again. But I feel like recently, especially, like, with the recent events in Turkey, the earthquake, and, like, I don't have, like, a big group of friends in Turkey yet. It's, like, I feel kind of, like, comedically stifled, because I feel like that silly side of me is not, like, organically has not come out as much being there. But yeah, I enjoy doing the voiceover of Red.
I think we need a writer's room.
Yeah, I do. I need something, like, to kind of, like, pull that out of me again, and, like, play with those silly voices again. I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose it. I definitely don't want to lose the potential of doing something or being silly. And I think it's wonderful. I think even, like, as Muslim women, like, it's just great to keep cultivating that childlike side of us, and that kind of curious, really innocent kind of side of you. And I think, especially if you're bogged down by something maybe that's traumatic that happened, or, like, it's hard to bring that out again and stuff like that. So hopefully I can with these writers groups. I would love to.
Yeah.
Bring out some silliness and do some silly comedic skits again. We need it. The world needs it.
I think there's something very therapeutic about comedy. I mean, there's limits in some ways. Like I know what you mean. There was kind of like that kind of 90s almost, I don't want to say golden era of comedy, because it wasn't necessarily golden era, but it was just for us because it was very nostalgic. But like sometimes comedy can go into quite dark places as well, and it can almost be a bit too heavy or too what's the word I'm looking for, kind of jarring, you know.
Yes.
And there's times when I'm just like, okay, that actually isn't really funny anymore. I just want to laugh because I want to feel good.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like hard. It's like, as the comedian, like on the other side too, it's like, you know, you think like, oh, maybe people aren't going to get this. Like sometimes I've heard that from people like, oh, I just didn't get it or something like that. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of like discouraged me and sometimes, but you shouldn't let that bother you. Like, I feel like if you're having fun with something and you're, you know, being organic, people will see through if you're being, you know, being fake about something. Yeah.
That's a really important point. I was going to ask you, that was kind of segues into my next question, which is kind of two questions. How do you deal with, on the one hand, success and people sort of going, woo, you're amazing.
Yeah.
And like, you know, maybe a feeling of being a little bit overexposed, like being out there on YouTube and things like that. And then on the other hand, that feeling of rejection, which also inevitably comes sometimes, like you say, somebody didn't get the joke, or somebody wasn't into something that you did, or maybe it's just a feeling that you have of like, that wasn't good enough for my standard.
It's weird because like I've never felt that, you know, the woo success. I've never felt that. I've always been that hard on myself where I don't like, I don't know, like I feel like maybe with the teacher's day video, and I was just proud of myself and shocked that we did that in 4 days and that it turned out as beautifully as it did. I think that's when I was proudest, like this year, and like happy about it. But like honestly, I didn't get like, you know, it's not like people were writing to me saying like I was amazing, or like I didn't even have even my friends in the United States like didn't even like the video, who are like people who I've worked with before, videographers, like people didn't like it. And it's just, I think that is like maybe a blessing in disguise, because to be honest, like if I kept thinking like I was successful, or I like, oh, I had this success, or like beating off of that feeling, like maybe I wouldn't get other work done or get better at what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Because like I feel like a lot of the time, like I haven't really had like so much praise. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel like I've ever experienced like so much praise from people. I think but I also think like maybe that makes me think like maybe I haven't done what I need to do yet. Like maybe the great thing that I need to do is still out there, like, and I need to do it, you know? So not that I'm doing this for people or anything, but I'm saying like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm still, it still motivates me to work harder because like I haven't actually received that praise. And I think maybe that's a good thing, because I think it doesn't mean you're not successful. I don't feel like, oh, maybe I'm not successful or like whatever, but I just know that maybe, you know, you have to do what you love and love the process. Like that's what I've heard from one of my mentors is like, you know, imagine there were no people and you were just doing this because like you felt like you had to do it. Like, would you still be doing it? And the question is, like, yeah, like I would, because I would have to get this creative, you know, this, you know, this is my outlet and this is what I have to be doing. It's not, if you can answer yourself honestly, that it's not just for other people, you know, that you're doing it for, you're doing it obviously because there's something innately inside of you that wants to get this you know, this story out, or this poem out, or this song out, and you're just enjoying the process, then that's it, you know. And so I it's hard when you say like, oh, can I balance like this, because like really I haven't had that kind of like praise. Like I mean, my parents have shared my videos and stuff, but like does that count as like someone praising you? You know what I mean? Like like nobody. And I think that it's good. It's good for someone like me, because it's you should be humbled, and you should be kind of like focused on like, okay, what's the next project now? Like, you know, what's the next like you know, venture, you know, that I'm going to be on. So, but it's a good question though, because I'm sure, I think someone maybe who I don't want to say with more success than me, because like obviously I feel like everybody has their own version of success, but maybe someone who's like a famous YouTuber or something like that would have a better answer than me, because they've dealt with a lot of maybe praise from like random people and random fans and random kind of supporters, and then on the other hand kind of dealing with how do you balance that? So but that's my answer. That's what I have
That's
for
a really
someone
cool
on my
answer.
level.
I think we should come back to that in like 10 years time when you've like won a Grammy. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Like, look at how modest she is, mashallah.
No, she
know,
won a
how's the second
Grammy
part, though?
for sleeping. She won a snoring. I make an album of me snoring. I wonder if that would get any traction. Me snoring because she slept all morning. That's her album. I'm just gonna like play with the audio and like beatbox to it or something.
You know what? That would probably go down a storm because that's just like really original and out
It
there.
would be
but-
super weird and original, and yeah, at least I know like you'd be willing to buy it.
But then it's also like, what's the question of what is success? And if it's something that is bringing you joy and making you happy, then that is success.
That's actually what I was thinking with when you answer that question, because it's like, yeah, I can't say I'm not successful, because like I feel accomplished in some areas of my life of like, okay, I've done this and that's interesting that I've done that, and being grateful, having that gratitude as a part of it too. I think sometimes it's easy for me to lose sight of that, and I think that's what can also muddle your thinking and like how you view yourself and like what success is. It's being grateful for like the opportunities you've been given so far and who you've worked with, and maybe if it didn't even turn out, okay, so what, Nadia didn't get into all those film festivals because it was the pandemic or whatever. It's like, well, you have other opportunities now, and that was a stepping stone, and you learned so much from that, and what can you do now? Or like, oh, with the comedy, it's like, well, I do the red voiceover, but I would love to do maybe something bigger with a whole slew of voices that I do. Well, there's maybe time for that, and it's looking at it in a positive lens as opposed to like, oh, what if lens, that can sometimes bog down a creative. I think sometimes is the what if.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I mean, in a way, I'm looking at your career and thinking, wow, she's done so many cool things. But like, if it's you who's done it, quite often you're like, oh, that old thing.
Like someone who works like a 9-to-5 job, someone who works like 9 to 5, it's different, because it's like you go there, you show up, you do the work, you come back, and there's other intricacies involved and other details obviously that I don't know about or wouldn't know about. But with an artist, it's just like project to project based. And so if you're not doing a project and there's a lull, it's that kind of dip of confidence sometimes, oh no, anxiety, there's a lot of roller coaster like emotions when you are a creative, because it's never consistent. And that's scary, that's scary, it can be scary sometimes. So
how do you deal with the creative lulls?
I mean, like it's hard for me because I feel like I'm a blob and I'm not living up to my potential. Like I'm just a little snail or something.
Can you do the voice of the snail? Can you do the voice of the snail? Not living up to
That's how I feel. That's how I feel. The snail would be like that. Just with his landing. I could just picture a snail with like a little mouth just like opening and just like trudging little path. I'm a weird person, as if anybody who just
Snail, I'm sorry, you have to do this now. You have to do it.
I know. My daughter and I, she and I do snail voices to each other, because she's like, oh, we should do like a snail show or something like that. She did say that. Maybe we should. Because she loves it. I talk to her like that in that voice sometimes too. So like little snails.
Okay, how about, would you like to read one of your poems and then we'll wrap things up? Because I know.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Your time, so fun
temple.
and so enjoyable.
It's really
I'm sure
tough.
you
I
got
know.
amazing
It's so
feedback.
sorry I jumped from like 8 different I feel like I jumped whenever you asked a question, I was like, well, this is gonna go off on a tangent and hopefully they just can follow me. But thank you for everything, for organizing this and everything.
Thank you
Okay,
so
so
much for
I
joining,
found
sharing all of your amazing insights. But what a brilliant, mashallah, multifaceted, creative life you lead.
thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, honestly, it's just been I think that's why I have sometimes a hard time like getting things done because my mind is like I want to do like 4 different things at once and I'm like that I end up not doing any of them or I do one and I'm like yeah,
And you
I'm
feel like it's not enough.
but I'm
because
still thinking about the other 4 things. Like even though I'm doing that one thing, I'm so you can relate. Okay. So this one is called With the Moon in My Cup. With the moon in my cup, I look up, and all the hurt in my heart ripples out in the dark. Pain doesn't travel that far or survive out of heart. If the canopy spread wide above could catch my vibes, would it bend out of mercy or repel all my cries? I can't tell from my place or the moon and its face. I can't see a droplet out there. Do they even care? Each staring orb seems still as my chest shakes in its ache for some sign to appear. But oh, it's a relief to know the sustainer that placed the moon for reflection and all the canopies layered high for protection. These creations feel nothing of my losses. Not one sigh will change their orbits and their courses. But the one who knows my pain can hold up the galaxies, me, the tea, my now overflowing cup. There is mercy in these tears, so look up.
Oh,
Look up.
beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
You're an incredible storyteller because we can go from the slug, the
The
snail
slug snail.
that isn't living up to its true potential to this beautiful, profound reflection. And
Thank you. Yeah, I can get
we'll try and hook
hashtag
you up
deep
with.
sometimes. Talk.
This has been such a lovely conversation. I don't
Thank
want to
you. Thank you for all of this space, this beautiful talk.